Back in 1689, a scientist would make an invention that would allow for all modern computing. That scientist is Gottfried Leibniz, and he created the modern binary number system. In 1956, three scientists would create an invention that allowed for binary to be used in coding. Those scientists are Dr. John Bardeen, William Shockley, and Dr. Walter Brattain, and they invented the transistor, despite the popular saying great minds tend not to think alike when it comes to who should get the credit. These four scientists created the modern usage of binary code and contributed to the scientific community in other ways as well. This is the brains of binary, a tale of numbers, egos, and competition. The history of modern binary began in 1689. Gottfried Leibniz was a genius mathematician, philosopher, theologist, and scientist. He often competed with Isaac Newton. Yes, that Isaac Newton, for his discoveries. Calculus is often credited to Newton, but Leibniz published work on it while Newton was holding back his work due to anxiety. Leibniz also helped create the modern understanding of binary. I want to specify this as the modern understanding. The great calculus controversy is a debate on which of the two originally invented calculus. They both are credited with calculus's invention due to discovering it separately. Leibniz did get peeks at Newton's work as they sent letters to each other as they worked, but by then Leibniz had already created his version of calculus. Gottfried also created the derivative in his version of calculus, and many scientists such as Euler would use it as a foundation for their mathematical discoveries. Newton had the British monarchy on his side and would deceive the British Empire into believing that he was the sole creator of calculus. Civilizations across the world for centuries have been using binary equivalents for complex mathematics. It was just Leibniz who brought it into the modern age by using ones and zeros. This was a massive breakthrough for the time and brought many new ways to explain our world. After all, that's what math is all about. Binary is one thing Leibniz had over Newton, but is one of the few. Newton would win the fight for popularity, at least in the English-speaking world, debatably for the worse. Binary is important to all modern computing, and many have used it on a day-to-day basis. Binary is a numerical system made entirely of ones and zeros or any base 2 system. Rather than having a ones place, tens place, hundreds place, etc., a binary system has a ones place, a twos place, a fours place, an eighths place, etc. Binary only has two digits, so you can either have 1 4 or no 4s. For example, 1 0 1 1 is 11 in binary. You have 1 8 plus 1 2 plus 1 1. Binary is mostly found in computers in modern day, but many people don't understand how the code works. Binary numbers are either 1 or 0, on or off. A transistor is a very tiny over-engineered switch that can either be active or deactive. These switches are now very tiny and called microtransistors. Which one of them makes up a bit? If you have 8 bits, you get a byte. A million bytes is a megabyte, which you've likely heard of. Microtransistors are microscopic and run all the calculations on modern computers. Every pixel on your screen has a color associated with it. That color is decided by 3 bytes, considering the RGB value. RGB stands for red, green, blue, which are the three colors our eyes can detect. In different levels of power and combined, they can make 16,581,375 different colors, which is 255 cubed. Each byte of information is a number between 1 and 255, so a computer can't make infinite colors. Only 16,581,375. Each pixel takes 3 bytes to choose a color, which adds up to over 5,000 bytes of information purely by the colors of pixels on the average Chromebook screen. In 1956, AT&T was running telephones and had people connecting calls to one another across the country. AT&T was using vacuum tube technology. The tubes were the switches, which would be replaced by transistors. The tubes took up massive amounts of space, and AT&T needed to compact their systems into smaller buildings. AT&T owned a laboratory in Indiana called Bell Labs, so AT&T hired 3 of their greatest minds to create a replacement to the vacuum tube. Those minds were Dr. Walter Brattain, Dr. John Bardeen, and William Shockley, often called the thinker, the tinker, and the visionary, at least by PBS. Dr. Brattain was a tinker due to his ability to understand and build any contraption he was tasked with creating. Dr. Bardeen was a thinker because he could explain anything anyone threw at him. Finally, Shockley was a visionary because he could tell how important this invention would become. He always looked toward the future. The two doctors would spend their time in the lab creating the invention or in the office making theories, while Shockley more often than not just offered guidance and suggestion to help them. Since he was the company elected team leader, they made an excellent team. Unfortunately, these three great minds don't think alike, so just like Leibniz and Newton, they began bickering over who should get the credit. After many months of work, the three had their invention prepared for the world, but they needed to patent it. Shockley thought that because he was the team leader and he came up with the original idea for it, he deserves the credit. Upon hearing this, Bratton shouted, "There's more than enough glory in this for everybody." Bardeen was angry at him, but didn't say anything. Shockley believed the other two had betrayed him and were going to take his credit, so in response, he created a substantially better transistor within a month. The other two would still like each other and keep in touch by playing golf together often. The three would meet up again to receive the Nobel Prize in Physics over in Stockholm, Sweden. Shockley would create Shockley Semiconductors, which was a failed company that collapsed under his leadership. Bratton would continue working at Bell Labs, although under a different part of it, and Bardeen would go on to win a second Nobel Prize for his theories on superconductivity. The transistor would go on to be a commercial success. It would quickly be modified and made way smaller to the point where you need a microscope to see it. These smaller transistors are microtransistors, which are used in 99% of modern day electronics, even whatever you're watching this on. They would allow for computers to be in the home or common workplace, and now even in your pocket or in you. Pacemakers contain microtransistors, calculators contain them, and even Christmas lights. They are everywhere. Anything electronic has them. An entire area in California called Silicon Valley is known for making them. I can strongly say with great certainty that the invention of binary code is a turning point in history. Code, as defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, a system of signals or symbols for communication. Therefore, the second that Leibniz created binary, he created binary code. The thing is that it's hard to say that it made a very large impact without including the discoveries of scientists over at Bell Labs. The four scientists created binary and helped to bring it to where it is to this day, and some may say that they changed the world for better or worse. Despite the amazing invention, there is a moral to the story. In both cases of scientists creating something, there's a conflict over who deserves credit. Leibniz versus Newton, or Bardeen and Bratton versus Shockley. They all created something and all deserve credit. Humans are naturally selfish and want it all for themselves. Even the greatest minds alive can be petty. I didn't include the great calculus controversy for nothing. It was to teach a lesson. There's one side of the story I didn't tell. Newton only convinced the British. The entire rest of the world believed Leibniz. Currently, they both take credit for his invention, just like how Bratton, Bardeen, and Shockley all took equal credit for their Nobel Prize. Even though we all learn as toddlers how sharing is caring, many of us disregard it. It is one of the first life lessons we learn for a reason, yet some of the greatest minds alive forget it sometimes. As Bratton said, there's more than enough glory in this for everybody. He was right. A transistor could have made millions or billions for him, though in the end, all five scientists received credit for their inventions, including Newton. In conclusion, binary is important in history, and is used by almost every American every day without most of them realizing it. Despite his battles with Isaac Newton, Gottfried Leibniz independently created a binary number system using ones and zeros to communicate numbers. Around 300 years later, three scientists working for AT&T would win the Nobel Prize for creating a transistor. This invention would go on to be used in electronics for over 70 years and to this day. The legacy of these scientists would go down in history for many reasons, but one thing that stands out is the selfishness and resolution of them.